Hey, I'm Richard Miller with Goldie May, and this is the live genealogy research series. Watch as James Tanner and I, along with invited guests, work through a genealogy problem with no script and no agenda. Maybe you'll learn from the big strategy, maybe you'll learn from the small features in the tools, or maybe you'll just see a better way to do it and you can leave a comment so we can all learn. I hope you find this really helpful. Now, here is the research. Welcome to episode 19. We have a case from James today, so James is here with me sharing his screen, and I'll turn the time over to James.
Okay, well, decided I'd jump back in time a little bit in England and look at one of my English families. When you're looking at FamilySearch, you can always view your relationship so you can see how you're related to this particular person. So he married one of my cousins. So then we can look at what he's doing. He was born, and we see here that there's some about 1821 of a birth. That's always interesting when you find that in an English record because of a very simple fact. They didn't record births, they recorded christenings. So the question here is there a baptism or christening record? And is that birth correct? They also have a death record here. Another interesting thing, you can see there's a little bit of a problem here with one of the, I'm going to pop this up just slightly because that might help everybody. You can see there's a problem here with parentheses. That's kind of interesting. That's not the way that we would record wherever that place is. So we'll have to verify that place. And then we have residences around. All of them are in Lancashire. Then their residence in Sutton, and his wife's name's Sutton. So we're trying to figure that one out too.
Okay.
And down here, there are 3 children listed. And she outlives her husband by a few years, but they're both born reasonably close in time. Children in marriage record says it's St. Helens, Lancashire in 1847. Peter 1848, 50, and 54. There could be more children because she lived a long time and he lived for a while past that. So we'll see with that what all that means. The next step, and always continue to watch a lot of these, you'll see that we sometimes follow exactly the same procedure each time. Now that's important because it's kind of like touching the bases when you run, you do a run in baseball. You've got to touch the base. If you miss the base, what do they basically you can get out real quick. And that's what happens here in genealogy. If you don't go through this process with each of the families that you work with, you very well may have a problem. And we're going to run into a little bit of I already know there's some problems out there with this family, so we'll see what happens when we get there.
Okay.
Philip in the household of Richley in the 1841 census. Now, that's kind of a bonus of working with someone who was born in 1821 because they would be about 20 years old at the time of the first census. And if they're in the census records and we have the children and all of that information in the census records, then it just facilitates getting the information that we need to make decisions about this family. So we have the 1841 census. If we look at that, it says he's 18 years old, which means that the calculation about his birth date or whatever is probably not quite accurate. And then secondly, his father's name is Richard and Margaret, and they're living in Prescott. So now we're going to check that out as we go into it. So if we go here and go to Maps, which is Google's program, and we type in Prescott, Prescott, you'll see Prescott Valley, Prescott, Arizona, Prescott, Wisconsin, Prescott, Arkansas, Prescott, Washington.
Strong influence from England.
So you might want to put in UK and go there. Okay, so here's the place that they're calling Prescott. And it has a Prescott Museum, and here's a St. Helens Hospital over here, and here's St. Helens. So it's another name we just noticed from the list. And if you look down at you probably can't see it online very easily, but down here it says there's 2,000 feet is about an inch on this map right now. So this is only much less than a mile between the middle of Prescott and St. Helens. If we want to, which is always a good idea, we can pop in here and start seeing all the streets. So there's a lot of
Incredible.
people actually in here because if you look over to the left, you'll see it's right on the outside of Liverpool. Now we're going to pop in here, and you never know what you're going to get on the first pop. If you start looking around in the English countryside here, if you look up here, you'll see these chimneys. And the way that the chimneys are put together depends on when the houses were built. Although these don't look like they're very old, and across the street looks like there's a fairly modern apartment building, or it could be condos or apartments. These houses will probably date back to the early 1800s, even into the 1700s. This is the common row house kind of construction. And that was a very large apartment complex. And so this is sort of a suburb now of Liverpool. And I'm sure there are people that live here and commute into town. But this is the standard early 1800 into the 1700s construction. The reason being, of course, they didn't have central heating, and they put a fireplace at the end of each part of the house. So now they can heat up the whole house from each fireplace from both ends. So that's kind of how these are constructed. So you can just do a quick look around. Why do I do this? I think it's important to do this because it gives you a sense of location. You really need to understand, where are these people? Are they living in a town? Are they living in the country? Are they living in, what kind of conditions did they have? And this tells us rather quickly. And if we drive along here, we'll see we're getting close to the church. There we go. There's the church building. And when you're doing this, you can see that when you have a church building like this, and you don't have to, just because it's one-way street, we don't care, unless they didn't get to go in there, which they didn't. Sometimes it's helpful that they have a big sign out in front that tells what the name of the church is. And if you drive around the church, it'll tell you specifically, and that'll help you also, because you may be able to find the records, start identifying records from that place. Okay, so we're kind of through with the Prescott issue. Here we have him in the census record. Let's take a look at the record itself. There's that.
Oh, I see the Richard Hindley second page up a little bit.
Oh, there it is.
Right
okay.
There. Yep.
It was hiding behind big black marks. And Margaret and Philip, 18. Okay, so let's go back to we have Richard and Philip. Okay, let's go to Philip Hindley. Okay, that's where we were. And in Philip, this is his, and Richard, his father. So let's go back and see what we have here. We have that. We have Philip Hindley, and I told you this was going to be a problem.
Yeah.
We have Philip Hindley listed as the father here, 1847, St. Helens. And on that particular census, we have Richard and Philip as an 18-year-old. So the question is this when he was an 18-year-old? And that is the 1841 census. And if it is, then he had a residence of 1841, and he was born in 1821. Okay, so we're
approximately.
The problem
18.
is that Philip is not his father, because in the census it says his father's name's Richard. See, here's Philip, the son, and ditto Margaret and Richard.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're kind of in a boat floating without any direction, because we aren't sure that we've actually identified, have they picked up a record, simply stuck a 1941 census of Philip Hindley on there and then come up with a date, but then didn't bother to look at the census record to see what his father's name was or what happened with this particular record. By the way, you don't have to go very far in your genealogy if you have inherited genealogy from from people in your past, that you'll find exactly the same thing in about 3 seconds if you keep looking. It's
Certainly
very
true for me.
common.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now let's look and see. We have a Peter Hindley. Let's see if we're related to Philip. Let's make sure I'm related to Philip here. Yeah, I am related to this, to Philip that married Sarah Sutton, and he's that's the direct line ancestor, descendant, cousin that I'm related to. And he has a Peter who's born in 1850. So let's look at Peter in 1850. This is him over here, and his father's name is Philip with Sarah. He has a few more children, and he's also born in Prescott, Lancashire. And so let's see where he shows up, get an idea. Go down here. Here's the 51 census, which would be him and his family. And nope, this is Peter, his father, because he's zero. Well, he's zero in 51. Now he'd be this guy. But again, it's very interesting because here, what does it say? It says Peter Hindley, and the father, head of the household, is Philip, married to Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have Peter Hindley with Philip, his father. And when we look at that particular thing, now we have a birth date again, but now we have a christening date of Peter. Let's go back to Philip. Let's solve the problem of his birth versus christening, and whether that is even, we know for sure who he was.
Backed by a source. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll go back to the sources and look at all this. We'll close this one. We have marriage. Here's one, a parish register, and that one is a marriage record again. By the way, you usually will get, if you keep looking, you'll usually get 2, 3, or even 4, and as many as 5 records that all appear to be duplicates, but they come from different levels of the Church of England and in different jurisdictions. So basically, you need to record all of those because then they kind of reinforce each other. And there may be some differences. That can be because they copied incorrectly or for whatever reason. So we have children here. And then we have a 51 census. And the 51 census shows him married to Sarah with a Peter that's 0. And we have
Some
apprentice, and we have a Neville. One thing that's always interesting when you start working with these ancestors, particularly in England, is you start to see common names of people. And because the descendants of some of these people, not all of them, a lot of them just stayed in England, but a few of these descendants of these people immigrated to the United States and ended up being my grandparents. And so what's interesting is to see the surnames of people who either intermarried or people that I knew that had who were descendants from pioneer people who came to America and moved to the western part of the United States. So I had a law partner named Neville, and I have a sort of a step great 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 grandmother named Beeswick. So those are both names in my family line to some extent. Well, Neville not. Well, it is now because it's all part of this. Find out there's Nevilles in here.
Interesting.
So that's kind of how this works. Now let's go down and see where we are. Okay, so basically, as we go through this list, we do not, when you see something like this, Philip 4 in entry 4, in entry 4, in entry 4, that means he's showing up as a father in those christening records.
So he's not the primary person, he's a secondary person. Okay.
And he is showing up in the 1851 census as the father, and he's also got the son Peter, who is now in this one. And that's the HPQ feed, Peter, who I've got over here. So we can close that. Okay, so now let's look at Peter and see what we've got. We've got Philip, his father, Sutton, and we only have 3 children listed for Philip. So let's go back real quick to Philip and look at the census record again. This is the 1851 census. And that shows him with Peter and an apprentice and a servant and a servant. So they only have 1 child here. And when you see somebody has an apprentice and has 2 servants, these people were not your poor huddled masses. These were people who had some property and businesses that would support that. We can look real quick to see what their occupation was. So we can go here and
I think it's like grocer.
Yeah.
Earlier. Oh yeah.
Grocer. So he was running a grocery store or shipping and moving groceries, depending on how you look at it. But they were moderately well off. Okay. So now let's check out and see one more thing. One more thing is that with 1 child here, and Philip lived until 1861. So there's a chance he shows up in the 1861 census. So that's the question.
Yeah, I was wondering. My eyes were looking lower and lower down there to see if I'd see an 1861 census.
Yeah, no.
No.
But perhaps he died before the census was taken, and which is the reason why it's not there. We wouldn't necessarily go out and look for for this purposes of this, we don't need to go out and look for the 1851 census. Okay, so here we have another Peter Hindley, and this is just out of the blue because this showed up in my research. This one shows up, and he was born in Wigan, Lancashire, in 1846. And his father is William Hindley and Peter Hindley, and here's Peter Hindley. So we're kind of getting a lot of people by that name in this same little area, even with the same surname. And so that's something we need to be very careful about. And if you see here, there's a possible duplicate of this person. And when you look at that possible duplicate on a merge, you'll see that we have a William Hindley, and we have this Peter Hindley, 1848, who is also in Liverpool area, and this gets married a little bit later. So the question would be, are these people all related? Is there some way that they're all related? They're in different towns. That doesn't guarantee, even if these people, of course, are the same person. I mean, this is the same person because it's a duplicate person. Maybe, because now we know that there are that many Peter Hindleys out there. So we're probably going to have to be a little bit more careful about putting it in. But he's got a
father named William.
Yeah, and he has 2 spouses, and he has a William Hindley as a father. So it looks possible, but I wouldn't do anything, even though that they've got them, because the 10-year difference in age may make all the difference in the world, and we never know with this names that seem to be popping up that we're not going to get another William or whatever. Okay. So for the time being, we're going to kind of not look at that guy because we don't see anything immediately that would claim. We're going to look at Philip. And he has the 3 children, and the children are born in, once again, they have birth dates, and they have an about date, and then they have another about date. So let's see why we're not finding information specifically about these children. So here we have Philip for Ellen Handley, births and christenings. Ellen Ann Hindley is her name, and she was born on the 16th of April of 1848. So we go back to see. And a simpler way to do this when you're looking at it, if you don't have double screens, and since I'm showing on one screen, a simpler way to do this is to go right here, open up another copy of FamilySearch,
Mm-hmm.
and then go to the tree, go to recents, and pick up Philip, and then pull up the sources over here. So we'll open her source. And then when we go back over here, we can look at her record and see what we've got. They have a 23rd birth February and a christening in 48 of 16 April. Neither of these, by the way, are standardized. So we're going to do a quick standardization here, just as a kind of a housekeeping thing. So, by the way, what I'm doing is if I click right after the name and then I touch the space bar, I get the correct. And then if I just click, I'm through. So basically I go click, click, and can copy, and I don't have to copy anything or write or type anything. And it says standardized, so that's no reason to change that reason. So where did they get a 23rd February 1848 record? And just as kind of a reality check, make sure I'm still related to this person, which I am. That's an interesting one. So we'll look at her sources and see. Here's the births and christenings, and this is the christening date. And we can open all of these at once, and so that makes it easier than having to click to open them. But you've got to look at the records and see what they say. That's another christening date. And this one, this is a recent change with FamilySearch, as they bring up these big pages full of stuff that if we really
there's that show button too. It says index information show. That might
that worked.
Yep.
Okay. New stuff.
Yeah.
Here we go. See, no birth date.
No birth date.
And down here, a burial date. And here, England test burials. And that's on Ancestry. So let's bring that up it'll bring up in another. And there's a birthday, 23rd of February, 1848. And Philip and Sarah Hindley in the parish register. And here's another parish register. So somebody did record a birth date, 23rd of February, 1848. So let's see if we actually have that. 23rd
so if you're back on that, if you're on that birth tab, James, and it says birth, and then it says 3 sources. What are those? I'm curious. If you click on 3 sources, what do you see there?
Oh, you mean if I click here?
Not edit, but just to the left of that on 3 sources. You can click that 3 sources.
Oh,
as a
that
link.
3 sources. Yeah.
What does that show?
That's the 3 records
coming from.
This is FamilySearch.
Oh, so they're estimating it from the death date, but it's not. So it's referring to the year, but not the month and day. Okay.
But here, if we're looking at this last source, which is going to be a world source,
which was one. Yeah,
that's the Ancestry one that showed that it did have that
the month and the day. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, what we've determined is that there's quite a bit of information here, and now what we do is here we have add a spouse because but we look carefully at that and we see it's 48 to 51. So she died when she was 3 years old.
Hmm.
So that's not going to have. But then Peter lived till 93. Now, so the question is here: somebody managed to find a birth and christening record for Ellen, but what about Peter? And Peter's the HPQ person that we were involved with just a minute ago. So let me get rid of that, and we'll go here. So why don't we have a more specific? If we do, so we have births and christenings. We'll just open all these, and there's a christening date, 28 July 1850, and he has. That's the date they have here. Okay. So sources. And there's another one that's the same. There's FamilySearch. Okay, so the question that would come up is if we want a birth date for this person, it looks like what we could do is look for that person in Ancestry and we'd have a birth date. So there's always perhaps it would have the same record. It obviously has the record for his sister, and so that's probably the same parish record. So he's probably in that same parish record, and if the priest in that one was recording the birth records, then birth dates, then we have birth dates.
Okay.
So basically, as we work down through here, we'll see that he's in the 1881 census. Okay, we'll quickly look at it. And now we have an interesting here because we have Peter, Hindley, and Ellen, and then we have William, Philip, Annie, and a lot of information, including the fact that he's a joiner, a woodworker. And then this is on Sutton Road. So interestingly enough, these people married into Sutton Line and now they're living on Sutton Road.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
You can see how everything just starts to go, yeah, well, that's what happens.
All ties together.
Yeah, and if you go back far enough in these lines, as you do come forward, you'll find out that you're probably related to nearly all, if a large percentage of the parish people in a certain parish. So that's the good news and the bad news because of that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that kind of wraps it up for what we're able to do today, but kind of to summarize, when you're working down through this, there may be some questions because of things in England. Some of the things that are what you might call their danger signs or flags that tell you there's a problem. First of all, we've got to check the location for all these people so that we know where these places are and how close. The second thing we've got to do is be painfully aware of the fact that everybody used the same first names for everybody. If you go look down through these families here, you're going to see Joseph, William, Mary, and Ellen. So there was sort of
tough. Yeah.
And here's a William, and here's, and here's another Ellen. And so there's just, the names are really crucial. And that there are going to be people in the same area that seem to have the same, very close. You may come up with merge suggestions from FamilySearch where they're not the same person, just simply because the information is so close and you have to be really careful.
The names match, but you've got to check the places and other details.
And you've got to make sure the places are matching. And then it's, in every case, you should be working your way down through all of these records because the information that you have here, like the occupation, are going to help to differentiate. So this is going to be the Peters Hindley who lives on Sutton Road, and he's a joiner in Lancashire. And that may be enough information to make sure that you have the right guy going down and getting more information. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's about it.
Good. All right, James, thank you so much.